Welcome to the Strategy Skills Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Safarova, and this episode is sponsored by strategytraining.com. And today we have with us an amazing guest. I think this is the very first time, even though we have so many episodes over so many years, over a decade, we have been running this podcast. I think this is the very first time we have someone coming for the third time, and that is Bill George. You will know Bill from previous episodes. He is an executive education fellow at Harvard Business School and former chairman and CEO of Medtronic, and he's the author of The True North, Emerging Leader Edition. Bill, welcome.
Chris, I'm honored to be back for the third time. I was honored to be here the first time. So thank you so much. And things are changing so rapidly. I think we have to continually look at where we stand today. So I feel privileged to be back with you.
100%. Such an important time for us to have this discussion and for people, for our amazing listeners to hear from you and your thoughts on how do they lead in these very difficult, chaotic times. Where do you think we should start this discussion?
Well, I was going to say that, we came into this new century thinking with great promise. But if you think about the last 25 years, it's been nothing but a series of crises and chaos, going all the way back to the September 11th attack on the Twin Trade Towers at the World Trade Center. We had the total financial collapse, you recall, of 2008. I don't think, for all people now saying they anticipate COVID, I don't think anyone anticipated what this terrible disease was going to do to shut down our world. And by the way, there's a lot of post-psychological fallout, particularly for younger people today, from having been shut in during that period. And now we have, it's like things are changing every day. It's a world of chaos, and it requires a very different kind of leader than it did in more stable times.
And just before we started recording, you and I were talking about the topic of our podcast today and how some of the things people are struggling with right now is fear. So many people who have been working their whole life, developing skills, trying to be the best leader they can be, they're now scared to lose their job. They will not be able to provide for their family. They have all these fears. They see all these headlines. This company laid off a lot of people. This other company laid off a lot of people. What will be your recommendation for someone to not lose themselves as a leader, given what is going on?
Well, I think as a leader today, everything you said is correct. And there are a lot of layoffs. There are practically going to be a lot more coming up. There's a lot of changes. And so I think people are going to have to rethink their whole approach to leadership. It's not like leading through stable times or all the things we're taught in business school about accounting and process controls and finance and marketing principles. It really is a time of not just managing from within and looking down, but looking up to all the things that are happening out there. The external events are coming at us. And I'm finding in teaching CEOs at Harvard Business School that a very significant percentage of them feel very comfortable leading internally. They're great leaders. They're operational leaders. They know the business. They know the numbers. They know the customers. But they really don't know how to deal with external events. And they almost fear those external events coming at them. They fear the media. They fear kind of being a public figure. But today, if you're a leader, you are a public figure. And so you have to face that reality and lead in very different ways so that you're a whole leader that can integrate the internal things and the external things.
And of course, your book gives people a great foundation of how to think about what is happening right now and how to not lose themselves in the process and how to understand their values and their true north, as you call it. So let's cover this a little bit, especially for people who still feel that even though they are successful and they have been promoted ahead of schedule and they have a team reporting to them, they actually still don't know what is their true north.
Well, that's a real problem, because I think today you need to have the grounding of knowing who you are. That comes, Chris, from your life story, the experiences you've had, and also comes from the great challenges you've faced, the crucibles, we call them, where you face great challenges. When everything's going your way, you get promoted, you get bonuses, you start to think you're better than you are. I did that when I was a tennis player at Georgia Tech. When I lost, I learned all my weaknesses. So crucibles expose us and our weaknesses, and we realize it's not about the external gratification we get from people outside saying we're great. It's really looking inside ourselves and being who we are. And I think the people that are really going to struggle now are the ones who are faking it to make it, that are trying to impress the outside world, but really aren't grounded inside themselves. So this is a time to be grounded in your basic principles and your values. As I say, that's who we are. That's our true north. Our true north is something as simple as our principles, our beliefs, and our values all rolled into one. Only when we know that and we know how to lead ourselves and the difficulties we've had, then we can go out and try to lead others. And I see people jumping the gun and trying to get out there and trying to lead other people without even knowing who they are. And the people they're leading kind of don't really have a real confidence in their leaders when that happens.
Bill, and if someone, after listening to our discussion today, and I hope they will go back and watch the other two episodes as well and get your book, if they start thinking, okay, so I have a life story and obviously it shaped me, maybe I yet don't understand fully how, but it shaped me, what would be some guidances you can give them on how they can start understanding the key life experiences and how it shaped them?
Well, I think as you process your life story and you understand your relationships, where you came from, who your parents were, your family of origin, the living environment, the communities you're in, you start to see the things that shaped you. And these really shape you as a leader. There's no kind of standard mode of leaders. Here are the 10 characteristics you have to have. It doesn't work like that. And that gives you the confidence. And maybe you face these difficult crucibles. Maybe you lost a brother or sister to illness, or maybe you had a parent that you never really felt was proud of you, or maybe you yourself lost your job or went through a divorce. You realize that that really helped, that has a shaping influence. But also, when you accept yourself for who you are, then you know that you don't need all this external gratification, and you don't need constant validation from the outside, a title, a promotion. I see a lot of people at very high levels getting caught up. Like somebody once told me, a CEO, very successful, said, without a title, I'm nothing. Well, there's a time you won't have the title. In fact, my colleague Hubert Joly, which ran Best Buy and now is my colleague at Harvard Business School, said, he actually said to the newspapers, he said, I am not the CEO of Best Buy. So I'm Hubert Joly. That's the title I hold. I won't hold that forever, but I still want to be Hubert. And I thought that was a really good way of looking at it. Don't get so caught up in your title. Oh, I make more money than you do, or I'm envious because you make more money. You have a bigger house. If you look at life like that, you'll never be truly satisfied. It's only when you're from within, you feel good about yourself as a person. And then you're going to be able to be a loving, kind person to not just your own family, but everyone you work with.
Such a critical insight you're sharing here. So many people are losing their identity when they lose their job because their identity is their role instead of a person they are and what they stand for. Going back to figuring out your true north, I really loved a quote you had in your book from philosopher William James, who said a century ago, the best way to define a man's character is to seek out the particular mental or moral attitude in which he felt himself most deeply and intensely alive. At such moments, there is a voice inside which says, this is the real me. And you mentioned in the book that you felt intensely alive when you became the CEO.
Many times in my life. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I felt that many times in my life, but go ahead.
Yes, and when I was reading it, I was thinking, of course, you felt it many times. You just gave one example to showcase what you felt and so people can apply it to themselves in an easier way. Can you take us to that moment when you became the CEO and what specifically made you feel alive, the CEO of Medtronic?
The important thing is I learned in my previous company, I joined Medtronic and then I became CEO. Previously, I had been at Honeywell, which is a great company with great values, but frankly, their purpose, if you will, was making money. Now, look, in business, I've been in and able to be with organizations that made a lot of money, and we're proud of that, but that is fleeting too. And so that's not what resonates me. That's not what I hope someone says to me at my funeral, says about me at my funeral. Oh, Bill George made a lot of money. I would say, wow, please don't say that. It's who am I? Who is my character? I felt when I got to Medtronic, I could really be myself. I felt like I was coming home to a place I'd never been before. that were I had a real congruence of my own purpose and my values, and they came together at that time. And even though the company was much smaller than it was at Honeywell, it grew up to be much larger, but at the time it's much smaller. We felt like we could carry out this sense of mission given to us by our founder of restoring people to full life and health, and measure ourselves by how many people did we help every day, every year, and that became the criteria for success. And if we could do that, wow, you can go home and say, wow, we helped these people. Just this one person. You see this one 18-year-old boy that we helped restore his whole life. It doesn't have to be a million people. And you feel like I'm really contributing something in the world if I can help other people. And I think that's the way the 90,000 employees of Medtronic feel. They're really proud of what they do.
Do you remember the most intense feeling of what this philosopher was talking about in your life when you really felt this is the real you?
Yeah. So, let's go back to the 18-year-old boy. We had something called a holiday party. It wasn't really a party at all. We had 6 patients that came in, and our founder said, take a look at this young 18-year-old boy that's coming in, young man named TJ Flack. And he was born with cerebral palsy, and he had gotten out of his wheelchair, and he had crutches. And so I heard him tell his story, and I had tears in my eyes when he talked about how he was on the verge of suicide when he got his Medtronic pump. That really, he said, this pump, this Medtronic product, he patted his abdomen, and he said, this changed my life. And he said, now I have a life. And he became a financial analyst, and he got married, and he had children. But before, he had no life. And so, wow, if we can make a product to give someone like that a sense of life, and we can make it for a lot of other people, what does that do? And so that one moment said, wow, this is what I should be doing. This is what I'm called to do, is to try to create a company that can innovate with new things, invent new things, bringing new products, all focused on trying to help people be restored to full life and health. In other words, meet their unmet medical needs. And Medtronic has done that. We had a wonderful product for Parkinson's disease, where a lot of older people get Parkinson's. We've got a product that can really help them. So these are what I call miracles, because they do transform people's lives. And that's what really makes me feel like this is what I should be doing.
It is incredible to be part of an organization that makes such a huge difference in people's lives. And such a good example. And I can almost hear people listening to us, some of the people listening to us saying, Bill, it's easy for you to say, I am not working in an organization like that. I didn't have experiences like that. I don't know if I have anything to mind to fully discover what is my true north. What would you recommend to someone who is stumbled?
Well, I think this idea of having purpose, where you find a congruence between your purpose and your organization purpose, is so critical. It can happen in any field. A colleague of mine was running the whole consumer side of U.S. Bank here, one of the largest banks in the country. During COVID, everything shut down. Branches were all shut down. And what they did is they asked their people, go call your customers and say, hi, this is Tim here. What can I do to help you today? I know you're going through a tough time. And a lot of people were. Financially, they had tough times. They didn't have enough money to pay the rent or even buy the groceries, and or even feel like they had confidence to leave the house. But just this idea that here's a banker, not trying to make money off you, but trying to help you. And going, I think this can be true in any business, the insurance business, certainly in wealth management, certainly true in products. How are we helped by having a technology-based iPhone so that we're not locked to our computers? How are we helped by having automobiles that have some self-driving features? I mean, we can go on and on. To just about every business, there's a deep sense of purpose if it's well run. Now, the ones like General Electric that say we're just making money, they're going to wind up, frankly, going away. And it doesn't exist anymore. There's divisions, a couple of divisions left out of the 100 some divisions they had, because they didn't really focus on how to help people. And every business has got to focus on that to have sustainability over time. So yeah, you can find out within your organization and where you can do that. And then you can make your contribution, whether you're an engineer or a salesperson or a marketeer, or you're working in the computer room. You can find, I contributed to that overall solution. They need my help. And I think I've seen this in a lot of organizations where they're really mission driven. And you can see it when you walk in the door, even like in a restaurant, or the people who work there, they look sour and sullen and I hate working here. I can't wait to get off my shift. Or say, hey, it's great to have you here. How can we help you today? How can we make this lunch fun for you? and we've got some great food. What can I do? And convey that sense. It makes you just feel good. I want to come back. And I don't care if it's a Michelin 2-star restaurant. If I don't get treated that way, I'm not coming back. If they're just kind of negative about it. So I want to be with people that are positive. And that brings up a whole nother subject, Chris. We have too many toxic leaders in business that are out for themselves. They put themselves ahead of other people. And I know so many people in mid-level positions have to work for somebody like that. I had to work for people like this. It's not fun, and it can ruin your life. And at a certain point in time, you got to get away from it because they drive you down. They take credit for what you do. They always critical of you. They're never positive, and no matter how good work you do, it's never good enough. And it's more like how many hours do you work rather than what work you produce. And so if you're working for somebody like that, as many people on this line are, I think you're going to have to find somewhere where you can work for people. You'll work hard, you'll do the job, and you'll feel really good about working with them.
This deep sense of purpose really can help people face these turbulent times. Without it, it feels you are without a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy then to get lost.
Mm-hmm.
When you work with executives, what are the biggest challenges they are facing right now? You already mentioned some of them, such as not being able to deal with external situations.
Yeah. So in this period of chaos, I think we have to rethink our leadership. A lot of things we learned in business school or we even teach today in business schools are kind of irrelevant. I mean, it's nice to know about process controls and 10-year strategic planning, except no one can do it, Dave, because you don't know what it's going to be 10 days from now, much less 10 years from now. So I think we need a much different approach to leadership. And so I developed some principles to think about that. The first one I find more people in leadership have trouble doing is facing reality, starting with yourself. Sometimes you have to look yourself in the mirror. Maybe I'm creating this negative culture. Maybe I'm turning people off. What did I do wrong? Maybe I can't face this worst case. The things are going to be really bad. We may have to close a factory. We may have to change the business we're in. And so that's the first one. And then I think second, and this is the number one thing I'm concerned about today, is I see people abandoning their principles and values. So I think number one is you have to stay true to your purpose, your personal purpose and the organization's purpose and your values. And if you back off, if you lack the courage to face powerful forces coming at you and say, no, this is who we are. We stand for something. Now, once you do that, then you have to adjust your strategies and tactics. You can't just have a strategy that's not working for today's environment that worked yesterday. So you have to adapt quickly. You have to adapt your tactics. But I think a lot of people, what happens is they pull back and they say, oh, they feel overwhelmed. So instead of getting their teammates involved, they try to solve the problem themselves. This is the time to get your team involved. Say, hey, guys, we got a real problem. We could lose the whole business. What ideas do you have to keep it going? And I can tell you examples of all of these. And finally, actually, there's so many people pulling back right now. Pick up paper any day. You'll see thousands of people being laid off. This is a time to go on offense, not go on defense, not to pull back, but to go forward and make bold moves. But all five of these things take courage. It takes courage to look yourself in the mirror. It takes courage to stay to your principles and values. It takes courage to change strategies and tactics. And sometimes admit to your team, I don't know what we should do. You tell me. That takes courage. And finally, going on offense when everyone else is pulling back, that's real courage. You might fail, but you might succeed tremendously.
Let's build on this. This is so relevant. Maybe let's start unpacking it, starting with going on offense, since it was the last point, and very, very relevant for our leaders listening to us right now. If we unpack it, if we elaborate on it, what would you like to say here?
Well, I think, again, in business terms, it's hard to gain market share when everyone's investing, but others are pulling back. But I think beyond that, with the change, you need to lead the band, have the courage not just to be a follower. And a lot of people that are cutting back are just following what everyone else is doing. Oh, it's a good time to cut back. It'll please the stock market. They're not the bold leaders. I see somebody like Satya Nadella at Microsoft continuing to make bold move after bold move after bold move, very much going out, making big investment in data centers. Now owning 27% of what is ChatGPT. It's OpenAI, it's called. And making a bold move there, getting into other businesses like gaming, seeing that there's new opportunities. And so, very bold. And that's the kind of leadership we need that has confidence to go forward. There's a company worth over $4 trillion. I think it's the second most valuable company in the world because he makes bold moves. And I think their stock's up 11 or 12 times since he took over 10 years ago. So that's the kind of leadership you need.
Definitely. And if we look at it from perspective of an individual leader, so let's say it is someone who actually works at Microsoft. They are relatively senior, but not at executive level yet. They are scared to lose their job, even though they are being told that they are a valuable member of the team. How can they implement that advice?
Well, talking of losing jobs, there's two reasons to lose jobs. One, because the business is not going well and the economy is cutting back. The other thing is happening, though, that so far that hadn't happened, but that will happen. There's no doubt because we do go through economic cycles. It has through all history. But the one that they're not really facing into is the impact of artificial intelligence. And so I think you have to rethink your leadership. If you're just coding with Python, you're doing routine jobs, particularly with the brains, as opposed to you're a welder or something like that. Those jobs, the frontline people are not, those jobs aren't going away. But I think a lot of the mid-level jobs are because people don't realize, where am I unique? Well, where can I bring uniqueness? Well, machines don't bring empathy and compassion. They may spin out lots of nice words, but it's really that being a leader that has a high level emotional intelligence, has high level self awareness, and can express a deep sense of purpose, but also for their colleagues express empathy for what people are going through, compassion for the challenges they face, and then obviously courage. Machines don't have courage. So somebody just writes an algorithm and you follow that. But I think having people having those qualities that can then integrate really complex subjects into a new whole and say, here's what we should do. That's the kind of thing. The machine can just look backward at what's there. Your job as a leader is to say, where do we need to go? And that's just not at the top, but at all levels. And we're looking for people with that spark of creativity who can really think out of the box and think new ideas and think, how can we do it better? Not just linear thinkers that say, we'll do it the same as you always have. Those are the jobs that, frankly, are going to go away. But to have a job and to be promoted, it's the people that come up with the innovative ideas for this environment. And I'll give you an example. Now, this goes back 5 years, so forgive me for that. But during COVID, Corey Berry, who was CEO of Best Buy, she'd taken over 6 months before, realized something was going on, this disease coming in. And within days, she realized, I'm going to have to close 1,000 stores and lay off 52,000 people. And her predecessor had even written a book that said, don't lay off people. She had to do it. She had to furlough these people, hoping someday to get them back. She did that. But then she said to her team, how can we keep going? And they created a whole new way of taking their showrooms to see all the products where you come in and look at them. You couldn't go in there during COVID. Make them into distribution center, have all the product there, drive your car up, send us a text that you're out front. We'll bring your product out. We'll put it in your trunk, pop your trunk, put it in. No one touches anything. And you drive away and you've got that new computer. You've got that new television set, that home entertainment center, or whatever the product is. It was just a whole different way of thinking about it. They reconceptualized the business. Well, today, people with AI wasn't around as much then. Now we have to reconceptualize our business. What unique services are we going to provide when AI can do so much? Well, take the AI and build on it. Don't kind of deny its existence or compete with it. Or just say, oh, it makes mistakes. Yeah, sure it does. Things always make mistakes. But I think it's really thinking about new ways of looking at things. I hope your listeners will do. And you don't have to be CEO to do this. We need people at all levels. As CEO, I value people at all levels, particularly people oftentimes in the trenches that had the most creative ideas because they understood the business so well.
So building on that, sticking with an individual who is relatively senior but not yet executive at a major organization, what skills do you think they should be building right now, given the time we are living in?
They should learn all aspects of the business and how to integrate them into a creative way. It's like they've reformed the business, it's like a Rubik's Cube. You're not just lining up a way, but you're thinking about it differently in more creative ways. And I think working as a team. Today, frankly, if you can see the Nobel Prize, they're not going to one person, they're going to teams. You have to be able to pull a team together. So pull together a cross-disciplinary team from people that represent all aspects of the business or the organization, and then sit and talk among yourselves and come up with creative ideas and be the person that's the glue, if you will. I can tell you a little secret about my career when I was at much lower levels is even at the highest level, I've never had anyone report to me who knew I that knew is that knew more about everyone knew more about the business than I did. In other words, I stumbled. Everyone knew more than I about the business than I did. My job is to integrate people together. They were the experts, so my job is to bring people together and figure out tough problems with good solutions because we got inputs from lots of people. And so it wasn't just going one way or the other way. It was trying to think about how do we think creatively about this. But my job is to be that integrator. And that's what I did in every job I ever had in my life, from the lowest level to the highest level.
That is very smart. And that is true leadership. I see it with clients as well. Clients who are most successful over a period of time as I see their careers unfold and they go to executive level and lead globally. Those are people who heavily invest in their team, promote the best people. It's not about, they're not scared about being replaced. They actually train in replacements because they
Yeah.
know that another opportunity will come. They're not trying to protect the role they have right now.
Yeah, that's very well said. You want to have everyone on your team be better than you are at what they do. And your job is to pull them together in an integrated whole. You think of what we've shifted away from the traditional style of management, what I call a coaching leader. So, what does a coach do? Coach doesn't actually play the game, assembles a team of the best people at each position. And the first thing people, to work with you, they have to know you care about them. That's number one. And second, then you want to get them all into what we call their sweet spot. That's the area where they're most skilled, use all their skills, and they're highly motivated. If you take a soccer team, some people would rather play defense than play offense. Great. Let's keep them on defense. So let's get somebody in the goal that loves to be the goalie. But I think that's the motivation and the skill level. And then we've talked about it before today. It's the alignment. Get everyone aligned around your purpose and goals. And if they aren't aligned around that, it's not going to work. You'll have a team going in different directions. You can get different input. So once you make a decision, it's like having a crew on the Charles River. Everyone has to pull in the same direction at the same pace. And the coxswain that you are as the coach calls the order, and then everyone goes and does that. That's whether it's a football team, basketball team, soccer team, I don't care. That's what teams do. But I think some people think, oh, this is kind of soft. There's nothing soft. You have to challenge everyone. All my life has been made up of how to help leaders reach their full potential. Often that means challenging them. Chris, I know you can do better. Let's see how we can take your game to the next level. And then finally, get down and work with your people and help. Leaders are spending too much time in their offices and meetings, looking at PowerPoint charts to filter data and just reading reports. Get out there and be with the people and understand the problems and talk about how can we solve that. Maybe we need to bring in some experts, but it's that. So it's really having the ability of caring about people, organizing them around their sweet spot, aligning them around a common purpose, and then challenging them to step up and finally helping them and getting in there, helping them do better.
Yes, seeing what is their potential, seeing them as leaders they can be, and communicating it. And when you tell someone, I know you can do better, and you're not saying it with criticism, you're saying it because, look, you're doing great. I really appreciate all your work, but I know you can do better. It reminded me of your dad telling you when you were 9, obviously you know it better than I am, that he wishes that you, I don't remember exact words, but it was something along the lines of he hopes you will become a leader he didn't become.
Exactly. In fact, he actually told me he wanted to be a CEO and even named the company, the Coca-Cola company, the great company. I worked there for a while. I might have stayed with him, but it was kind of, it was, but he cared about me and he was putting out very big challenges out there for me at a very young age.
And when someone believes that you can operate at that level, it resets the threshold in your own mind of what is possible for you.
So think about that, what you just said, Chris. If someone believes in you, you can really step up. Think about someone who doesn't believe in. They're constantly criticizing whatever you do, no matter how hard you try, you be criticized. I'm a graduate of Georgia Tech, and the second game of the season, their top star quarterback, as a candidate for the Heisman Trophy, was injured. And so they brought in a freshman, an 18-year-old kid. And first play, a set of downs, he fumbles. Okay? They lose the ball. Second set of downs, he throws an interception. Now, the kid's coming off the field, his head down, thinking his coach is just going to murder him, And the coach says to him, Aaron, that's good. You got those out of your system. Now, next time you get out there and do it well. So the third set of downs, he throws a touchdown pass and he comes off with a big grin on his face. Coach, that's the way I play football. So it's that belief in his coach that, hey, I know you can do it, instead of beating up on him for criticizing. I've worked for two leaders that did nothing but beat up on me. Frankly, they were the CEO, so there was nowhere to go. I wasn't going to go to the board and complain. So I eventually had to change jobs because I can't spend my whole life getting beaten up on when I know I have to give. And frankly, they just had a different philosophy of leadership that I did. And I didn't want to work in that environment. I wanted to work in a positive environment where people believed in each other and they built great teams. To me, that's what it's all about.
Just yesterday, I sent an email to our community about Thomas Edison and his mom. There's an interview with Thomas Edison about how he came home after he overheard that his teacher said that he is not smart enough. And his mom got really angry. She went to school and said to the teacher, he is smarter than you, and all kinds of things like that. And he said that at that moment, he knew that he had to prove that she was right.
That's great story. There's another Thomas Edison story where he was trying to find the filament for the electric light bulb. He invented this. And he had a foreman that was doing these experiments. And the foreman said, Mr. Edison, it's not working. We're going to give up. We've tried 1,000 ways to make this filament work, and everyone has failed. And Edison looked at him. He said, nonsense. Now 1,000 ways it didn't work. Go find the one that did. So he did find the one that did.
Exactly. And what we were talking about now, I learned it for myself in real life. When I immigrated first time, I immigrated 3 times in my life. So the first time was to South Africa, and I immigrated, and my degree couldn't be found in a database. So it was like I don't have any degree, any kind of education, and I had to start from scratch again. And my English wasn't yet very good. So I went to university, and I was really worried because I had to translate every word. In the textbook, every word I had to translate. And I was starting to prepare for my first set of exams. And I said to my friend, I'm afraid that I'm not going to pass, even though I'm studying every waking moment I can find away from work, because I was also working full-time and part-time. And he said, not only are you going to pass, you're going to graduate with straight A's.
Wow.
And he said it, and it reset the threshold. And what do you think? I went through the first set of exams and all A's. And then I graduated with straight A's a few years down the line, and then went to do an MBA with straight A's. It is one person, one time saying something, and it can have that kind of impact on a person.
And believed in you.
Yes.
See, that's the thing I think I find in interview. I've interviewed, like 250 leaders for my True North book, and in depth, like 75 minutes. The one thing a lot of them come up with, I had a mother that really believed in me, said, you can do anything. I remember Ken Frazier, the CEO of Merck, came out of almost abject poverty in the toughest area of Philadelphia. But he had a mother that said, Ken, you can believe in you. And a father who said, stay true to your principles. Don't spend your whole life worrying about what other people think of you. You just do what's right. And those two principles carried Ken through to become CEO of Merck and do a fantastic job. But it was that belief that you just talked about, Chris. So you had somebody who believed in you. And I think bosses and leaders can do that for their people, that I believe in you. Even if they don't believe in themselves, by the way. I'm working with somebody right now who doesn't really believe in himself, and no one's ever told him how good he was. I know how good he is, and I'm telling him. He said, I don't like compliments. I said, that's okay, but let me tell you how good you are. I'm just giving you feedback. You have this potential, so go for it.
And I think when we don't have somebody to believe in us, we need to believe in ourselves.
Well, that's true, but where does that belief come from? Maybe it comes from within, maybe it's a spiritual belief, but you also have people around that you can find that really do believe in you. So if there's no one else, you can find a mentor, a guide, a boss, a coach who really will believe in you. And having that person there can really inspire you to reach, as they say, reach for the stars, reach for the higher level.
Yes, actually, if you find someone who is kind-hearted and aligned with who they are, they see everyone in terms of their full potential, what they can become. And they, by default, will believe in you. You just need to find a person like that. They do exist. So let's talk about courage.
Mm-hmm.
When you spoke about abandoning principles and values and how courage is required, Let's say someone listening to us right now and they feel that because of what is going on and things are moving much faster than they can stay on top of, they sometimes have to abandon their principles and values. How do they start approaching the situation differently?
Well, I don't believe that. First of all, a lot of people are living in fear right now. That's no way to lead your life. Do you want to live a whole life in fear that somebody's going to dominate you? So I think you have to pull back from that idea of fear and really ask yourself the question, what's the worst case? What do I have to lose? Suppose I got fired from my job. Look, I'm capable. I could always find another job. Maybe I just need some time to reflect. And maybe when that one door closed, maybe another one's going to open that I never even saw. Or as long as I was in this job, I couldn't see that new opportunity. So I think it takes courage to go through that and to power through. But the people, the great leaders of the world, are ones that have the courage to power through, or great athletes who are losing and they figure out how to come back and win. They're the winners. Do you have that? And so I think, but that courage comes from within. It's not something that can somebody, I can't teach you courage. I can't sit in a classroom and teach 60 students how to have courage. It has to come from within you. But I think once it does, then you can step up and realize, hey, I can do this. And by the way, part of having courage is saying, I may fail. It may not work out, but that's okay. I'm very capable. If it doesn't work out here, I'll find somewhere else where it does work out. To really believe in yourself. And I think it's having that, but that goes all the way back to where we started about your life story, your true north, and knowing that you are capable, you're lovable and capable.
And I think one of the things that really help to find courage is if you stop thinking about yourself and take attention away from yourself to people you're trying to help through your work. Because we all do some kind of work. And if we focus on how we can be helping people through that work and placing our attention on them, that immediately changes the mindset and takes away fear. It works when you do public speaking. It works when you're leading a team through a very difficult situation.
Yeah, that's very well said. Is that the fact that I may fail and I'm going to get myself wrapped in around the axle, so to speak, and spend all my time praying, what if I fail? What if I fail? No, you have to believe in yourself. And like I say, if it doesn't, you might fail, but you might learn from that failure and come back. One of the reasons Silicon Valley has been so great, unlike other countries where the people are equally smart, equally intellectual, is people are afraid in many countries, if I fail, like say Japan, if I fail, my career is over. In Silicon Valley, it's a learning experience. Chris, what did you learn from that? It didn't work out. You say, oh yeah, now I've got a better idea. I learned about this. Here's what we're going to do, and we're going to win. And they do. They come back and win. So it's striking to me, that attitude of, but it is come from an inner belief, a deep-seated sense of confidence in self, belief in yourself. And I think to have that, it helps to have someone, whether it's a spouse, a parent, a loved one, a coach, a mentor, a best friend who believes in you. And I think that's critical, that you have people around who believe you can do it. And so I think as a leader, I mentor, not just as a leader, I mentor dozens and dozens of people on a regular basis. I'm having like 6 mentoring sessions this week, but I believe in these people. And I think when they get really down, they need someone there who can pick them up and say, you're terrific. Here's what you can do.
And you mentioned a spouse. Spouse is such a critical decision in your life. People don't realize that it is also a career decision in a way.
Yeah.
Because if you have the right person by your side, it will make all the difference.
And that person knows you better than you know yourself, and you need to listen to that person that can see you as you really are. So when you get down on yourself, my wife Penny has been that person for me. When I get down on myself, she's the one to pick me up. If I get too high on myself, she'll call me out. So I think having that person in your life is invaluable. Not everyone has that loving, kind spouse or is still seeking it, but they can always have a best friend, a colleague, a parent, a coach, somewhere, a mentor who will help you along the way. That's what I try to do when I'm mentoring people, is to believe in them and see their potential.
And they're very lucky to have you. And I know you do so much with your wife to help people through your different initiatives. Let's talk about facing reality, starting with yourself.
Yes.
What about someone who is trying to face reality, but they just don't see their blind spots?
They don't see their blind spots, and they aren't willing to face how bad it could be. And so they kind of go into an unreal course, not realizing that they're driving into the ditch. that's why you need feedback. You need people around you that will give you honest feedback. And that's, I think that's what it's, I used to be so blind I couldn't see my own blind spots, but having people around me that would give me that honest feedback, who cared about me. So I think if you just get feedback on people that don't care about you, trying to take you down, you don't let it in because you kind of get defensive and you put on the armor. But if you have people that care about you, you take that in and see that they want the best for me. I'll take that feedback. And they can say, Bill, you're not looking at this right, or you're missing something, or you really offended someone. Be careful, or whatever the feedback is. Take that in and really integrate that into your leadership and to your approach to other people, your relationships.
Bill, and you are so frank in the book, the way you were talking about how during university years, early on, you were trying to get leadership roles and couldn't get it. And then eventually someone gave you feedback that, look, you're just moving so fast, you don't have time to spend with anyone else. And you took it to heart and you adjusted, and then people started seeing you as a leader.
I was quite young. It took me a while to go through what I call my own self-help development program. But yeah, I was, thinking I was actually building a great resume, but not great relationships. And what I hadn't realized, Chris, is that leadership is all about relationships. You build that, and it's a caring relationship. It's a two-way street. All leadership is a two-way street. And so I hadn't really learned. I was trying to be a leader without learning about myself, not understanding my own weakness, my own flaws, and accepting those and trying to work on them.
Bill, and when you made those adjustments, what were the key adjustments you made that changed the way people viewed you?
I made a lot of changes. I went and started spending a lot of time with people, just listening to them. I was trying to sell them on my ideas. Just saying, hey, how you doing today? What's happening? What's going on in your life? What are the most important things? Anything I can help with? What challenges are you facing? That's when I started mentoring other people and helping other people. But it wasn't until I started asking those questions, because before that I was kind of telling them, here's what I think I'd like you to believe, I'd like you to think, and people just resist all that. But by taking time for people, I remember even when I was in college at Georgia Tech, I would take 2 hours over lunch. So because we had where I ate, there were two different lunch servings, one at 12, one at 11, and one at 12. And so by taking 2 hours, I get to talk more people. So that was a huge change for me. Now that's about all I do is sit and talk with people, say, how can I help? And that's whether it's in the classroom or whether it's on a one-on-one basis.
And such a simple adjustment.
Well, it wasn't simple. It took me a while to really understand what I had to do. Yeah, I guess it is simple, but it took me a while to adjust my whole approach to people.
It is simple, but it is not easy for somebody who is very driven, because you value every second of your day. And you spending time talking about little things that will not really make even big difference for the other person. It's not like you're saving their life. That's different. You will take time out of your day to save someone's life. Mm-hmm. But spending just time on small talk for someone very driven feels like such a waste of time. But you were able to do it. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about is about 3 qualities of authentic leaders, which you mentioned in your book: truth-telling, transparency, and building trust. Yep. Truth-telling is especially interesting because with some people, it feels that it is really 50-50 chance if what they're saying is true or not, and you don't know how can you possibly trust them. Why do you think it is so normal in corporate America for people not to tell the truth?
They want to mislead. They want to make it look better than they are. They want to blame someone else, not facing their own reality. I saw a long email today from somebody that I'd worked with, blaming everyone around him and not taking responsibility himself. I think that, but today when you we're all on our iPhones, we're all on the internet. There's a lot of negative and a lot of bad information out there. So what is truth? And I think we only get that in relationship to people that tell the truth. I had a colleague once that, he would say, Bill, we had a problem we got to fix. And I said to him, truth telling is not the absence of lying. I want to know the whole story. And if we have problems, I want to understand, not just a quick, easy answer. Let's get to the core. Let's tell the whole story. And then we can get experts to come in there and help us solve it. But I think it's really telling the truth, no matter the good, the bad, and the ugly, as we say. How bad? Because there are always issues. So having that truth is really important.
And some people didn't grow up in a family where they were taught that it is not right to not tell the truth. For someone who is an adult now, let's say they are 40 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and they are currently not telling the truth, how can they become the kind of leader who demands of themselves to tell the truth?
Well, why don't you tell the truth? Because you had to be perfect. Your mother said you had to be perfect. I know people like this, that so I can't actually face that it's not perfect. Here are all the problems. Here are the problems I created. So I think it's really knowing that you have confidence in yourself and can tell the truth. But a lot of that failure, unwillingness, is insecurity. That I'm afraid if I tell you the truth, I'll get fired. I'll lose my job. You won't like me anymore. You'll reject me. No, tell them the truth. We had this with Crucibles. If you really knew who I was, you might not like me. You don't like me as some former CEO. No, actually, if you know about the things I faced, you know that I faced problems just like you did.
That is very true. And another thing I really want to point out for our listeners is that you are really the father of authentic leadership in a way, because you were writing about it in 2003, way before anyone was talking about it really. What made you pick that topic out of all the topics you could have written, given your incredible depth of experience?
Well, I'd always wanted to write about it. What I saw in the business world in the late 90s when I was at Medtronic, a lot of leaders are trying to fake it to make it, trying to tell you a big puffed up chest. They're mostly white males and they're kind of telling you how great they are. And they want to say, oh, look at all the positives, not really facing the reality and trying to put themselves above other people. And I realized leadership was not that. For instance, when I teach, I wander around, talk to people. I will not stand up on a stage and give a lecture. I just won't do that. I think because you want to be one of the people, but I saw a lot of leaders doing just the opposite. So I thought, why are you trying to tell me how great you are? Why are you trying to go for adulation? Why are you trying to get all these kudos and these awards and ever bigger title? And so that's why I came out with the idea of an authentic leader. An authentic leader is someone is real and they're genuine. People say, what's it mean to be authentic? Even people writing books today, it makes no sense. Authentic leaders don't change, they don't adapt. Well, of course you change. Anyone who's authentic knows they have to continue to grow as a human being. That is the essence of every one of us, our lives. I'm older than most people I work with. I'm continuing to grow. I'm continuing to learn because I never walk into a classroom unless I'm going to learn from all the people in the class. I want to have a mentoring session. I had a mentoring session yesterday with a 22-year-old just starting his career. I learned so much from him about what it's like to start a career and how he's doing. And I got excited listening to him. So he didn't just come to learn from me. I learned from him. So all relationships are two-way learning. So what am I going to learn? What are you going to learn? How do we share and become better people and better at what we do because of that? So I think that is critical when you think about how you lead and lead authentically. So it's not about it's frozen in time. No, and you constantly take in feedback. If you want to grow, you talked about blind spots. You have to be willing to hear that feedback and then adapt. And if you don't do that, you'll have a high level of lack of self-awareness. And a lot of people do. They don't want to be really aware of the impact they have on other people. I found in life, Chris, one of the hardest things to do is to see yourself as others see you. You know how you want to be seen, but you don't know how other people see you.
George, and I want to finish with a question that I know is very relevant to so many of our listeners, because our listeners are very driven people.
Yes.
Very successful, but they're so hard on themselves, and that is completely easy for us to understand because you and I also driven people. And what many people experience, and I see it with clients who are very successful compared to almost anybody, but they constantly feel that they're behind, they're not doing well enough. If they're comparing themselves to someone they want to do an MBA with, they are not doing as well compared to certain people, even though they're doing better than a lot of other people. And they may listen to you, Bill, and think, okay, yes, of course, Bill, it's easy for you to say you had a very successful corporate career. Now you are executive education fellow at Harvard Business School and you work with CEOs. Of course, you can feel good about your career. What about me? And then they may say, oh, but I have that role at this company. And it can be a company that is highly respected, like Microsoft and so on, but still they feel they're not enough. What would you tell them?
There'll never be enough. Enough power, enough fame, enough glory, enough money. And if that's what your goal is, you find that within yourself. That's that deep inner reserve. And you see this in great leaders. They know who they are. if you're always, I see some very powerful leaders that I have to have a bigger boat, a bigger house than you have. I have to have a bigger title. My revenues are higher than yours, and my stock price is worth more. This is all nonsense. If you get caught up in that game, you're going to lose. You'll never beat. You'll never feel that deep level of fulfillment and satisfaction. I get my fulfillment. I realize my purpose. I've never been the expert at anything where I've ever worked. I certainly wasn't the expert at Medtronic. We had hundreds of experts around me, around us. But I realize my satisfaction comes from enabling leaders to reach their full potential. And why do I want to do this podcast? Why I was so eager to do it. I love the discussion. But no, it's for everyone, every one of you on this call. My hope for you is you'll reach your full potential, because we need leaders. Leaders make the difference between success and failure. And you can see organization. Jack Welch is successful at GE. Jeff Immelt destroyed it. And we see a new leader coming in at Boeing after 5 failures. You really have to have great leaders. And I want everyone on this call, Chris, and I think you do too, to become a better leader. You can be, maybe you're not even have any direct reports yet. Maybe you're just a new hire. Maybe you're at the first line supervisor, a middle manager. But if you can reach your full potential, you don't have to be CEO. You don't have to have a big title. But if you can do really great work and help other people, then you'll feel that deep sense of fulfillment. And then you can do anything, but you will feel good about yourself. So I'd hate to think of people that they never felt good about themselves because they always wanted more.
That is very true. Bill, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. Where can our listeners learn more about you, buy your book, anything you want to share?
Thank you. Well, I hope you'll all read True North, my latest version of the book. I didn't have it here, but it's the Emerging Leader Edition, because I think everything we've been talking about, we're kind of covering in the book. It's much more exciting to talk to you, Chris, about it than just reading it, but it's in there, and I think you'll find a workbook goes with it. But, I have a website, billgeorge.org, and you can find me there. And I'm happy to communicate. I'm on LinkedIn. I think I've got 277,000 people that I'd love to chat with you. So any way I can, I try to do feedback with people. I don't respond to political requests for money, but I do try to help people whenever I can. So it's a privilege to be with you, Chris, and reach so many of your listeners that in themselves are great leaders and have so much potential. And I just hope each of you listening in on this will take your leadership to the next level.
Bill, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you are doing for leaders. I agree with you 100%. Right now, we need leaders so much. We need it as a country. We need it as a world. We are all citizens of Earth here. We need great leaders. There are so many issues, so many troubling challenges that we are facing right now. Our guest today again has been an executive education fellow at Harvard Business School and former chairman and CEO of Medtronic, Bill George. By now, you guys should know, without even introduction necessary, he's the author of True North. Emerging Leader Edition is the latest one you can get. And you can actually access the key insights and practical action steps from this discussion at firmsconsulting.com/action. This is a new thing we are trying because I want you guys to make the most of this very important session. And it's so easy to forget because many of you are driving, you are traveling, you're in the airport, you're listening where you can because you're so busy. And I want you to have that download so you can make sure that you make the most of it. And you can also get some gifts from us. You can get How to Build a Consulting Practice Level 1 at firmsconsulting.com/build. You can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies at firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. And you can get McKinsey and BCG winning resume, which is a resume that got offers from both of those firms at firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. Bill, again, thank you so much for being here. I loved our discussion. I love always seeing your posts on LinkedIn, and thank you so much for all you do.
And thank you for inviting me back. I appreciate your leadership, Chris, and bringing these ideas to so many wonderful people.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to see you next time.